Hi, I'm Snake Blocker here. I'm a Lindypan Apache Tribe of Texas member, and I'm an expert in Apache knife fighting and battle tactics. Also pretty active in the martial art and military community. Today I want to talk about Waysun Johnny Tsai's newest knife, and what it is based off the Gurkhas, the Nepali Gurkhas, which are basically the soldiers over in the Nepal area. And they're known for having their Kukri type Gurkha knives, and we're going to talk more about that. I actually had the privilege of working with those guys and actually trained them when we were in Afghanistan. We had a group of about 20 Nepali Gurkhas that were military trained that came and actually applied some of the principles we taught them with the Apache knife fighting tactics as well. But we're going to talk more about this knife here. I want to do kind of a quick review. I like to review some knives that kind of stand out. I've been collecting knives and training with knives pretty much all my life, so I'm pretty picky on designs. I don't really like to promote or endorse any type of knife. So I'm not big on talking about knives and promoting knives that aren't unique. This is a very unique knife, and it has a specific tactical application. Although some knives look prettier than others, I like to go with something with a practical application, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that right now. When you first notice it, if you're familiar with the, like I said earlier, the Gurkha type knives with the big belly, this is the belly of the knife right here. The reason why you see knives with larger bellies here is the purpose of it is to have more power behind the actual chopping action or the thrusting or the stabbing action. So you can just basically see that if you're sneaking behind a person in a tactical setting where you got to take out an enemy because your life or your enemy is threatening you or your team, what you're going to have to do is you're going to have some type of blunt object to sneak behind a person, either chop them in the neck, chop them in the throat, chop them in the back of the head, trying to cause a disruption that's actually going to be beneficial to you, and make sure that it's going to be a quick kill, so they're not going to be able to scream after that or warn their other types of troops if you're doing some type of special op attack mission. So that's kind of the first thing I noticed about this knife and what I do like about it. What I do like about it also is it has that half blade with the double edge, and some counties you go to, they don't like the double edged knives, but they will allow it if it's a partial double edge here like this one. It's not quite sharpened out on this side, but it is on this side. So you got the sharper end on the front side and the more lighter end on the back side. However, you can sharpen this part as well. And what I do like about that, especially on this type of wide belly knife, is if you happen to miss the strike or you want a secondary strike, sometimes it takes too long to turn the wrist and pull it back. You can just simply jerk it back, or if they try to grab your hand, it's nice because you can pull the hand down and try to cut them, and they'll get the release, so they're not trying to trap your knife hand. So that's a huge benefit to having this secondary blade here. It also helps when you're actually using it in a thrusting action because it's going to go in the body a lot easier. And what I like about the wide bellies is when you're actually thrusting in, you can actually add that twisting motion. We call that the fire starter motion in the Apache system because it's adding that friction, and it's going to get a lot more deeper properties damage within the internal organs. So what happens with some knives is they're a little too clean. They're a little bit thinner on the main body of the knife blade, so when you go in and go out, there's not a whole lot of damage, so the person's going to continue the fight a lot longer. The wider the belly is, and the more you add that twisting action to it, the more destruction you're going to cause, and the more rapidly you're going to cause this person to collapse or cause internal functions to dissipate, like the lungs causing it to be filled with fluid or cutting the major arteries of the heart valve area. You'll also notice here is that you got the grooves on the edge here, which is kind of nice. So if I took this little stick here, and you notice that you got like some sharpness here, you know, it's really cutting into it. It's taking away here, or if you want to saw something, if you're worried about you have to utilize making spearheads or making something type of in a survivor situation, or if you have to skin a deer, you know, that extra edge is going to really help out a lot. You can add a little bit of thrust power to it, or you can just start to slowly scrape into the stick head. So you don't have to use the major part of the blade at all. You can just use the grooves in here for the sawing action, or we call it the carving action. Another thing I want to talk about is how they have the actual blade handle itself. What you'll notice first of all on this is you can see all the way through it from both sides. So a lot of knives here, they tend to hide on the grip here. They'll have that grip actually cover the entire area, and if you took apart a lot of the knives that are sold on the market, especially that call themselves tactical knives, if you unscrewed or took off the handle, you notice that it's a very small amount of metal that's actually supporting the major belly of the knife. And on this type of knife, you definitely don't want that. If they had a hidden handle here and they just had a smaller amount of metal in the middle part, you'll notice that that handle is going to break off pretty rapidly, and this in a tactical sense is going to be no good to you. So they've actually lowered it or narrowed out that handle so you can actually see the belly of the blade going all the way up, and you got the basic full, metal going structure from the top to the bottom, which is really nice. You'll also notice the grooves in the handle, and they allow you to have, especially for guys with big hands like me, you got that extra grip. So it's not so thin where you're going to feel you're just uncomfortable with that grip. And what's nice about it is when you go to that reverse grip, you're also going to have a good type of belly grip there, and you'll notice that it's just enough to fit right in the palm of the hand, and then you've got the grooves for the hand to clinch it in. One thing I always teach my students is the grip is really key with the knife fighting. If you don't have a good grip, technique goes out the window, and you lose your tool and you lose your technique. You'll notice also there's a couple of grooves in here, which is kind of nice because if you put the index finger here and the thumb here, you have an extra amount of support without sliding up and cutting your hand, because the blade doesn't start to serrate up until the second half of it. So by me putting my thumb in here, I add an additional action if I want to start hacking into the person or carving like we talked about earlier, and I have a much better support on my handle and on my grip and control of my blade. So this is key for blade control if you're doing close quarters carving or chopping action onto a solid object. You'll notice here what we have is we have pretty much a tapered end on each side. It also has a little bit of a groove there, and it's not very sharp, but it's sharp enough to add some type of destructive power. So I'm going to come over here to the tree for a second, and you'll notice that with this hard tree, if you start chopping into it, you'll notice that without me putting a whole lot of energy into it, you're going to see a lot of chipping of this bark here. And if you visualize this to be a person's skin or body, and you're digging into these pressure points up in here or up into the neck, you're going to cause a lot of pressure point action and a lot of compliance with the person if you're putting a lot of that pressure either in a chopping action or into a steady tension action. I'm going to come back over here. We're going to talk about actually looking at it in the action, because some knives obviously they have like the same type of similar attributes on them. However, when you're actually chopping with it or using it in a tactical sense, it's not going to be effective. So you notice that in some of the other countries, the Philippines, Cambodia, Nepal areas where they have the larger machetes and they use it in a practical sense on a day-to-day basis because of the jungle terrain or the mountainous terrain, you want to be able to chop through terrain as well. So even if you don't use this as an attack for tactical purposes, in a sense where a convenience of going camping and going in areas where you need to chop down quite amount of vegetation or any types of plants of such, you want that ability to do so without having to do too much work behind it. So that extra weight's going to help us. So you have that chopping action. And you notice that it's going up into the tree and it's cutting right into it from here. If you hold it here and you actually do it where I'm going to go a little bit lower here. If you cut it down, you notice that even earlier when I was chopping into it, it was cutting various angles. So it doesn't take a whole lot to come down and to do a few chops and to cut the entire tree off. So it takes a couple whacks at first just to kind of get it initiated on the thicker branches, but you saw the thin branches, they chop pretty quickly. So that's what I want to talk about. This is also made by one of the best companies in the U.S., and the U.S. is pretty much corners the market for quality knives. And the company is called Tops. They're out of Idaho, and what it is Mike Fuller, who owns the company. He's a special ex-military guy, been in Vietnam, has all the credentials. He's just not a knife maker, but he's a knife practitioner and a tactician. He hires people such as myself and Johnny Waysun Tsai that have knife experience and martial art experience and military experiences in some cases, and they're going to have them design and help them make some different innovative types of knives, which is this one. This one's called the CUMA Kukri, which is labeled on top if you kind of get in close. It says by Waysun Johnny Tsai. The logo here has the special op type logo, which is the logo for Tops knives with the arrow, cross arrows in the knife. It also says USA. It also has each one's individually serial numbered. This one happens to be number 58, and obviously the lower number you get, the better the value for a collector's point of view as well. So it's a collector's knife, it's a survivor knife, and it's a tactical knife. If you wanted to use it for some type of throwing action, if you prefer those types of actions, since I like to throw knives, basically, it'll throw, it'll stick, and it has a good weight for it. So you notice how much, because of that wide belly, how much it's able to penetrate, just the surface. And you can do the same thing if you want to do it on a tree. Reverse spinning on the knife, on the tree for the target. You notice it gets the hilt. So it emits this rotation on the belly. It's it's going to get with the hilt, and that's with the dull extension. You'll see when I pull it out, bled the tree. Look at that nice little sap